Good morning, party people. What's today? Today, February 1st. So let's recap what we've done in January of 2020. So for the last 4 weeks, we've been working on the fundamentals, and mastery of the fundamentals is mastery. And golf is a motor control skill. So everything that we've done in our entire life with golf is a pattern that you cannot unlearn, but we can write new books or new motor patterns over those. And so the reason we do the TPI fitness screen is to find out the limitations that we have in your body, and then we customize something specifically so that we can get your body more stable and mobile, but also your body may not be able to register how to do that movement, and so that's a motor skill. So by getting your golf swings and analyzing those and looking at the characteristics that you have, over the top, scooping, we can give you some drills that you can start building new motor patterns. So every year for the last 20 plus years, I've done continuing education of the fundamentals, from the grip, from the stance and posture, from the first part of the swing, the backswing, the takeaway, to the downswing, the second part of the swing, and the follow through. And so I'm going to do a quick recap on that, and then today we're going to be covering wrist positions. The key to controlling the golf club is with educated hands. And so we're going to look at horizontally what the hands do, perpendicularly what the hands do, and rotationally what the hands do. So just a recap of the grip, stance, and posture, and the takeaway and the downswing. You're going to want to do these individually, and you should have been doing them individually for 30 minutes a day, slow motion, because anytime you do something repetitively for at least 21 days, it can become an unconscious, subconscious habit. And when you get these new patterns in your brain and your body, then you can go out there and start playing golf versus playing golf swing on the golf course. Oh, where are my arms at? What are my hands doing? You train this over and over and over to have the perfect grip, the perfect stance and posture, the perfect takeaway and the backswing, and then the downswing and the follow through, so that you can go out there and play golf and score low. So the recap of the grip: I put the club in the fingers in the palm of the left hand, my lead hand. And then I've got a solid grip here, and this is power cue number 2, and this is also cocking of the wrist, and we'll cover that today. Take the right hand, put it on there, and then I would practice my grip for 30 minutes a day, and now I have a solid grip. Stance and posture, good stance and posture, practice that for 30 minutes a day. For 3 weeks, and by now, the backswing, and the takeaway with the waggle, nice and slow motion training in the mirror. You can do this over and over and over and over. And the key here is with this left arm: is it across my chest? Is it way up here, or is it just right? And you'll know what in your body what's just right. And then the downswing starts at the hips, and the shoulders, arms, and the hands, and the follow through. So go in there. These trainings have been uploaded in the members area, so you can go back and revisit them very easily. But today we're going to be covering wrist positions, educated hands, educating both hands. And you're going to have to take time and effort and slow motion training on these as well. So we're looking at 3 things: the horizontal, the perpendicular, and the rotational. So horizontally, this would be flat, where my wrists are just flat. Then I can bend them backwards, and then I can arch them. So for the left hand, my lead hand, this is flat, and then if it's bent like this is a situation where that would be scooping, and you don't want to do this scooping. You want to have an arched or flat or arched or slightly bowed at impact. So at impact, this left wrist is flat and arched. So I'm educating my left hand flat and arched, yet my right hand is bent. So I have on the right side I have flat, bent, and arched. If I arch it, that could be a scooping action. So if the right hand is arched and the left hand is bent, that's a no-go. So you want the opposite. And so you can actually just get your grip and you can cock it and arch it or bend or arch it right there and just hold that position all the way back. So the horizontal is either flat, bent, or arched. Now perpendicularly, we did this test where your thumbs are like this to your sides. So you have level, and then you have cocked up, and you have uncocked down. So if we look at power cumulator number 2, if I cock up my left wrist, that's power right there. And then as I uncock it, that's the release of power. As I uncock it, now I have it flat and arched. That's a good position to be in. Flat and arched. So we have level, we have cocked up, we uncock it down. Cock it up and uncock it down. And then rotationally, we have vertical, and then we have turned, and then rolled. So if I turn back, that would be power accumulator number 3. So we look at the accumulators, so we've got cocking, that's power accumulator number 2, and it's also perpendicular of the wrist. So I cock it up, and then if I turn this, we turn backwards, we turn the backswing, and we roll and follow through. Turn the backswing, roll and follow through. So if I cock it, power accumulator number 2, and I turn back, that's power accumulator number 3. And when I roll through, there's power there by rolling through. Rotational power, rotational power. So we can turn back and we can roll through, turn and roll. So we have the horizontal, which is flat, bent, or arched. We have the perpendicular, which is level, cocked up, and uncocked down. And rotationally, we have vertical, and we turn back, and we roll through. Now, if you put these into play, when we looked at the power accumulators, if I just cock up my left wrist, and I turn, and I can turn either hand, I can concentrate. You want to educate your hands doing these drills. So if I turn back and I roll through, so by cocking and turning, I've just used power accumulator number 2 and 3. And if I add in power accumulator number 1, which is the bending the right elbow, so if I cock it and turn it and bend my right elbow, I'm in a great position on the backswing. And so, cock, turn, and then bend my right elbow, or just lift up my lead arm, which is power accumulator number 4. So now we've got 4 power accumulators, 4 pressure points, and we're really educating our hands with wrist positions. It all ties in together. So cock, turn, and I can elevate my left arm, or I can simply focus on just bending my right elbow. and then rotating. So just by bending my right elbow and rotating, I've accumulated power number one. This is power accumulated number one. And when I get to the top of the shoulder, then if I want to start the downswing with just my right shoulder side, all I have to do is straighten out my right arm to release that power. And I just have to roll the club to release number three, and I have to uncock to release number two. So I have power accumulator number one, power accumulator number two, power accumulator number three, and I get all three of those right there. I can train on which ones I want to use individually. So if I was going to use number one, I would just take a straight line and just thrust my tricep right through the ball. Good morning, Dennis. Good morning, Todd and David and Dave. So again, just to recap, what we're covering today is wrist positions. You want to educate your hands. The best way to control the club is to educate your hands. And so horizontally, we have flat, we have bent wrists, and we have arched wrists. Perpendicularly, we have level, we have cocked and uncocked, cocked up and uncocked. And rotationally, we have vertical and we have turn back and roll through. And so in the golf swing, they talk about the magic of the right forearm for right-handed golfers. And how many times out of 1,000 times can we just do this? 1,000. So if you really pay attention to what your right arm is doing for right-handed golfers, by bending my right arm, that's power accumulator number one. By turning back, that's power accumulator number three. And by cocking, that's power accumulator number two. And if I do all these very slow together, and I cock, so this is the perpendicular movement of the wrist. I cock my left wrist, my lead arm, my lead wrist, and I turn my right forearm, and then I bend my right elbow, I'm completing a full backswing. And then it's just slight torso rotation. So I cock my left wrist, my lead wrist. I turn. I'm going to turn with this right forearm because it's connected to the hand. You turn your wrist. So I cock and turn, and then I just bend my right elbow. Cock, turn, and bend my right elbow. Now, if you're not familiar with that bend the right elbow, just train it. It's really just turning this back, or turning this back. Because what happens is then, if I turn it backwards, then to release that power, it's just rotational power. Rotational power. You look at all the baseball players, and they rotate their forearms. So there's 4 power accumulators, and we want to start be aware of the accumulation of power and how to release the power. And a lot of it comes just from the wrist and understanding the wrist, understanding what the wrists are supposed to be doing horizontally, perpendicularly, and rotationally. And the key to controlling the golf club is to educate your hands. And your hands are on the grip. And so that's why we spend so much time working on the grip, to have a solid grip so you don't have to worry about it during the swing. That's why we spend so much time working on stance and posture, so you know exactly where your weight is and where the movements of the body is supposed to be based on your body makeup. And so we spent the last 4 weeks working on the takeaway and the downswing. Well, now this is just going to enhance your mastery of the takeaway. And since we go slow back this way, well, once I get to here, I'm going to start cocking my wrist, and I can rotate or turn back. And so I cocked my wrist, power cube number 2. I've turned, power cube number 3. And I bent my right elbow, power cube number 1. And I extended my left arm up, power cube number 4. And there's pressure in here. And if I want to just focus on power cube number 4 and inflame this arm off my rotating body in my chest, naturally the club head is going to uncock. It's going to roll, and it's going to be arched. And that happens naturally with centripetal force. Just by pulling down. Once I pull down and it gets to a certain point, it releases automatically. So the wrist positions horizontally, where I want to be in impact, arched. My left arm arched. My right wrist. My left wrist is arched. My right wrist is still bent until both arms are straight, well past impact. So we have flat, bent, and arched. And so on the backswing, we would cock the lead wrist and we would uncock it and put it into an arched position of impact. On the backswing, we would turn back and roll through. Turn back and roll through. Good morning. Any questions so far? So I'm just going to keep going over this so you guys kind of understand what good impact and good ball striking looks like. So from a horizontal perspective, I want my left lead arm, wrist, arched and flat. Flat meaning this way, not that way. I don't want to over-roll it or under-roll it. So flat and arched, and then the trail hand is flat and bent. And I want to cock my left wrist, but I don't want to do any cocking of the right wrist. It's only bent. So the trail hand, the right hand, doesn't do any cocking or uncocking. It's only arched or bent. And throughout most of the swing, I'm going to make sure that right wrist stays in a bent position. And if it's bent and it's turned, well, then when I get my backswing, it's right where it needs to be, just holding the tray like a waiter. It's bent right up there. And when I get down to impact, it's still bent. It's still bent until the energy releases everything through. What is the best way? Let's see here. What is the best way to incorporate this into a daily routine? The best way to incorporate in a routine is simply work on feeling where the pressure points are and the power accumulator. So we know that pressure point number 2 is the fingers of the left hand, and that's power accumulator number 2. And it's also what we're talking about here, the cocking motion, the perpendicular motion, cocking, uncocking, cocking, uncocking. So the best way to incorporate this into a routine is just sit here for 2 to 5 minutes a day, cocking and uncocking, just to train what this wrist is supposed to be doing in the perpendicular move. What's the best way? So that's power accumulator number 2. Well, if we have pressure point number 3 is this little finger of the trailed hand on the side of the shaft down the line. Well, how easy is it to just turn my forearm, turn my wrist, sensing what pressure point number 3 is, because this is pressure point number 3, and this is power accumulator number 3, the rotational, the turning and the rotational power. So how many times can you just get your hand to shoulder height, just simply turning? So I'm focusing on the wrists and the hands and that number 3 pressure point. Turn my wrist, turn my forearm open, or turn it back, and then just get it up to the top. And I can sense and I can educate my hands. I'm going to educate this hand and this finger and this pressure point, just educate it. Knowing that, look, this is still bent. It's not, I'm not flinging it. This is arched. You don't want an arched right wrist. Bent. It's still bent. And when I just turn back, see my forearm here straight down, and I turn it back. Now this forearm is turned, the club face, everything is turned. I'm up here, and then I come down, and I would roll. Since it's turned open, I would roll it closed, but it's still level here. It's not overturned, overrolled. You don't want to overroll it. So you can work on educating the hands. I'm going to educate my left hand, cocking, and I can also educate turning. So I can do everything just with the left arm. So I can cock it and turn it, and then take my backswing. That's perfect. So I can cock it and turn it up here. As I start my downswing, it's going to uncock, and it's going to roll, but it's going to roll to square. And so the left wrist now is cocked, uncocked, and then it's arched. So what's the best way? Impact bag. So cock it, turn it, get to my shoulder height, and uncock it. Uncock it by pushing, I'm focusing on pushing the thumb down so that it's uncocked and arched. But really I'm rolling, since I'm turning it back, I'm rolling it through, but my body's going with it. So it's a real horizontal hinge. I'm just rolling right through. And I'm not over rolling like this to cause a hook. So you need to educate your hands to make sure you're not over rolling. There's a perfect roll right there, right down the line. So I turn it back and I roll through. You don't want to over roll it with your hands. So I cock, turn, take a backswing. Cock, turn, uncock. Here I am, uncocked. I've rolled, and I'm arched. This right wrist is still bent in impact. And then as I get through impact, it finally starts to so the right wrist really is going to stay in this arch position throughout the entire golf swing. Way back, it's bent. The way back, it's bent. The way impact is bent. It's still bent. So now the lead wrist, it's not only cocked, but it's also bent. We want to take it from a cocked and bent position on the backswing to an uncocked and arched position. You know, there's that hit and hold drill, but I mean, simply, you can just get into your posture. This is adjusted address. This is a term I use, adjusted address, and this is impact fixed. This is where we meet at impact, so I do impact fixed. So I've got a flat, arched lead hand, wrist. I've got a bent trail hand. That's a horizontal. Perpendicular. I got cocked and uncocked, cocked and uncocked. And then rotational. I've got vertical here. I've got turned and rolled. Turned and rolled. That's power. So this turn and roll power is power finger number 3, and it's attached to pressure point number 3. Turn, roll, turn. I can feel that pressure in this number 3 pressure point, and I can simply, slowly, just let the club be a part of the chain action. So my lower body started it just drops in the slot. Got a bent right wrist. I feel pressure on pressure point number 3. And as you can see, this is turned, my forearm is turned, and then I just roll it. Turn and roll. I can sense pressure point number 4, this pressure of the arm against the chest. And when we talk about the first part of the backswing, This is flat, this is flat, this is good, this is upright. So if I just take my left arm across, there's pressure point number 4. That's also power cube number 4. And I can take this pressure that's here, and when I take my downswing, I can thrust my arm off my chest and release power cube number 4, and then just practice releasing. Remember, we cock number 2, we uncock it, and then arch it. Flat left wrist, arched. So I'm not working on the swing here, I'm just working on educating my hands with the wrist position. So remember, this is turning, and it's cocking. So we cock and turn, we uncock and roll. And some of the things that I like to do is really focus on turning the right forearm, the magic of the right forearm. Because again, how many times out of 1,000 times can I turn this back and come right here? I'm turning and I'm rolling. But I'm rolling to square. I'm not over rolling down. Just roll. I'm turning back and I'm turning back here. Turn, roll, turn, roll, turn, roll, turn, roll. So if I turn and roll, here I am, back to flat. I'm flat, level, on all 3, horizontal, perpendicular, and rotational of the wrist. Turn and roll. And so I would cock it and turn, and I would uncock it and roll, and here I am. So I'm educating my hands, and I'm educating with the knowledge that we gain of the 4 pressure points in the 4 power accumulators. So when I like this magic of the right forearm, the reason I get a lot of distance is I use power accumulator number 3. Now, if you have a square face or a slightly closed face at address on your grip, and you use a lot of power accumulator number 3, you're going to see a draw or more of a 10, 20-yard draw if you're not conscious of what your grip is. And so the reason I have 1 or 2 or 3 degrees open face at address with my grip is because when I cock it and I turn it, I'm going to fire my number 3 pressure point and my number 3 power accumulator and swing like a baseball player to where I really want to rotate those forearms. Because how many times out of 1,000 can I do this? And I can do this 1,000 times out of 1,000 times, and if I have the right grip and the right face, how I need it to be, I can go out as hard as I want without ever worrying about it going left. It either goes straight or a baby fade. Now, if I want to get maybe a 1 degree or a square club face, then that would be a tiny little draw. But I'm going to really use turning power accumulator number 3, and I'm going to rotate those forearms, that trail forearm, as fast as I can. Hogan talked about it. I wish I had 3 right arms. 3 right arms. He was talking about the rotational power of that right arm because there's so much power when we rotate. So not only can you work on the wrist positions horizontally, meaning we're going to have it bent at impact. Sorry, arcs at impact, arcs at impact. Perpendicular, we're going to cock it and uncock it. And then we can turn it and roll it. So those are three things you can do with the wrist. You have flat, you have bent, and you have arched on the horizontal plane. You have perpendicular, you have level, you have cocked and uncocked, power pivot number 2. And then you have rotational, turned and rolled, power pivot number 3. So I work on power pivot number 2, pressure point number 2, power pivot number 3, pressure point number 3, and just train just those two. If I just turn and cock and just do a half swing or a 9 o'clock swing right to there and train this, cock and turn, and just work on what I'm doing in impact fix. Where am I here? Right there. Give me some more questions, Todd and Dave. This is fun. Golf is fun. Remember, when you control the club shaft, the club face, and the club head, you can control the ball. And educating your hands is how you're going to be able to master this. So educating your hands has to do with what are the wrists doing. So cock and uncock. Just cock it, uncock it. Just turn it, and roll it. 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 And you can practice this 5, 10, 15 minutes a day, just educating your hands on the proper wrist position at impact. And so anytime you take your right wrist and it's bent, that's an issue. This right wrist should always be arched to a degree. Full arch, little arch, but it's always going to be arched at some point through the swing. It's arched now, it's arched now, it's arched now, it's still arched at impact. It's arched. At impact, I want to make sure, let me make that correction, it's bent, it's not arched. It's bent to some degree. So bend backwards, so we did the flexibility of the hands and the wrists and the fingers. So it's bent to some degree throughout the swing. And when I turn, that's power pivot number 3. And if I have pressure, if I can feel that pressure, if I turn, now I've employed power pivot number 3 and pressure point number 3. And I can always sense it once I take my backswing. I can sense the club head. I know where the club head is at all times with this little finger here, my index finger. So you just have to educate your hands. That's the right wrist. Left wrist is always going to be uncocked and arched and flat. Flat left wrist. Flat left wrist. Flat. Flat. It's flat, but it's also arched. Remember, we cock it and uncock it. The uncocking is the arching part. It's arched, but it's also flat. It's not bent. So it's flat and arched. So I want to make sure we understand this here. Let's see, good camera here. Okay. So it's flat, bent. It's bent in the backswing. And then it's not only bent, but it's also cocked up and bent, cocked and bent, and then it's uncocked, flat, and arched. And you notice how the forearms, they're not over rolling. So we always want to be in front of us like this. And the bot, so a lot of mistakes happen when the hands and arms do this without the body moving. So my body's going back, my body's coming through, and this is just staying with my body. It's staying with my body. So if my body stays here and I flip it, well, that's the dreaded hook. If my body stays this way, my hands outraise everything, I'm going to hook it. But if my hands stay with my body, in front of my chest, with a flat, arched, uncocked lead wrist, I can play really good golf. Because we're going to be able to control the club, we're going to be able to control the ball. So we have flat, bent, and arched on the horizontal. Perpendicular, we have level. We have cocked, uncocked, cocked and uncocked. This is power cue number 2, and release of number 2. We have rotational power, vertical, turned, and rolled. This is power cue number 3. So I work with a lot of power cue number 2 and 3, and pressure point number 2 and 3. And you can play superior golf just by using power cue number 2 and power cue number 3 consciously, and automatically 1 and 4 will activate themselves. So if I just cock and turn, I'm not thinking about power cue number 4 or power cue number 1. They just happen because I'm actually turning my shoulders back. So as I rotate my shoulders back, and I focus on cocking of the left wrist and turning of the right forearm and turn my shoulders back, I'm in a great backswing, and I can just focus on 2 and 3. Cock, turn, uncock and roll. Cock and turn, uncock and roll. Cock and turn, uncock and roll. So wrist positions, we have horizontal, which is flat, bent, and arched. Wrist position perpendicular, we have level, with cocked and uncocked. And rotationally, we have vertical, and then we have turned back and rolled through. But I want to keep everything in front of my chest. I don't want to keep my chest still and just fling my arms and overturn it, overroll it. So if I look at the 430 line on the ball, I get my stance and posture, take my practice swing here, and I can even just cock my left wrist and turn, and look at, there's a perfect backswing. If I just cock my left wrist and turn my forearm, or I turn my right wrist, whichever one you want to focus on, I focus on my forearm. So now I'm on plane, I just elevate my left arm, and have a perfect backswing. So if I just focus on cocking and turning, and then I want to roll and uncock, so I work on a few of those things, educate the hands, educate the wrists, what are the wrists doing throughout the swing, what power accumulators you're using, what pressure points you're using. And just, if I just use power cue number 1, just to bend it, that's about a 9 o'clock swing. You can just train nice, easy 9 o'clock swings cock, turn, bend my right elbow, and fire down, out, and forward through the 430 line. So this will be uploaded in the members area sometime soon, next week or so. Focus on this, wrist positions, educate your hands, learn how to control the club shaft, the club head, the club face, and you can control the ball. Go back and do the grip, stance and posture, first part of the backswing, and then the downswing. But going back to the first part of the backswing, in the Hogan training, just like this. Well, now you know exactly how to get there with power cue minutes. Number 2, number 3 turn, bend the right elbow. That's a perfect backswing. Get in the mirror, cock, turn, bend the right elbow, look in the mirror. And then just release. Once you accumulate power, you've got to release the power. And when you educate your hands, you can release it in the right sequence. So next Tuesday will be live from the bunkers, doing some more bunker training. I believe it's going to be sometime Tuesday afternoon. I'll let you know in the group. For those of you that need to get on my calendar, let's do this. If you're stuck somewhere, reach out to me. I want to help you. Your body's really important to make sure that you have stability and mobility. There's 3 things you need to be a great putter: reading greens, hitting your line, controlling your distance. Work on the finesse wedges. Work on your distance wedges. Make sure you're doing this stuff over and over and over so it becomes a subconscious habit. The reason we're doing the grip, stance, posture, takeaway, downswing, follow through, and training over and over, slow motion in the mirror, is so it's a new motor pattern, and then you go out there and play golf. But I would definitely spend some time working on power accumulators, pressure points, wrist positions, and what's going on in the swing. And, keep doing your mindset work that you are amazing golfers and that you own the golf course. I'll see you guys next week.